Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the 79th Rolex Sydney to Hobart race briefing. It's great to be part of the race myself personally and to line up against such an awesome fleet of fellow competitors. And thank you and welcome to this briefing this morning. I'd also just like to additionally thank Justine Kirkjean, the CEO of the club, who's been leading the management team here, and they've been doing an awesome job and have prepared this race beautifully. So thank you, Justine, and your team. And in particular, I'd like to also call out Tara and the sailing office for also managing what has been a very, very good race entry process. So thank you, Tara. As well as the club's administration, this race, as you know, relies heavily upon a lot of volunteers, including our race committee and our finishing partner and the volunteers around the club. So I'd also like to call out to the volunteers and thank them as well. So thank you. I'll introduce each person that's coming to the dais as they're due up. So without any further ado, the first person to introduce is Gabrielle Woodhouse from the BOM. Thank you. Thanks, Gabrielle.
Thanks, Sam, and welcome everybody to today's briefing. To start off with, I'll just be going through some aspects of the Bureau's forecasts and warnings on the water, and then we'll start to have a look at what the weather conditions will be for the race itself. So to start off with, on the forecasts and warnings, you'll obviously see some information around the wind. The wind, as you know, it'll change from minute to minute. So what we see on the forecast and in the observations is for a 10-minute mean or 10-minute average wind. Obviously, wind will be stronger, and quite often you can expect wind gusts to be about 40% stronger than what is on the forecast. And likewise, in terms of the directions, it will be given by the compass points. When we are seeing the risk of squalls, particularly through Victorian waters and also thunderstorms, they're going to be mentioned separately on the forecast and not necessarily part of the wind itself. And in addition to that, there is obviously the marine wind warnings that are issued by the Bureau. And for the categories, we have strong wind warnings, and that's for wind speeds of 26 to 33 knots, gale wind warnings for 34 knots to 47 knots. And then we start moving into some very, very strong winds with the storm and hurricane force warnings. Now, one thing to note is with the storm wind warnings, that is completely separate to thunderstorms. So it does get a little bit confusing because both do mention the word storm within it, but just note that if there is a storm wind warning, that we're expecting wind speeds of about 48 to 63 knots, and obviously some fairly rough seas with those winds as well. Out on the water with the waves, we do have that mix of seas and swell, and how they combine will give us what we call the significant wave height, which is looking at the highest third of waves forecast. So what this means is when you have those different waves combining, they can combine such that we almost see double the wave height from what is forecast. So bear that in mind when you are reading the forecast, that those wave heights are only looking at the highest third, and that you could be expecting to see almost double that wave height in terms of the maximum wave you may see. Likewise on the forecast in the weather section, but also in the weather situation, the synoptic situation, there'll be mention of a number of different things, whether it's thunderstorms or cold fronts and troughs. All of these different weather phenomena will either bring you a significant wind change or some kind of hazard out at sea. So make sure that you are paying attention to what some of those words are, because that'll give an indication as to how those systems are behaving, whether it's a deepening low pressure system or the timing of a cold front arriving. In terms of the forecasts themselves, as you probably know, we have the coastal waters forecasts, and these are for up to 60 nautical miles offshore and also include some of the local waters, including the Sydney enclosed waters and also down in the Derwent estuary. These forecasts go out 3 to 4 days and they're updated twice a day. When we have warnings that are current, so whether it's a strong wind warning or a gale wind warning, those warnings are updated every 6 hours. and if there is a significant shift in, say, the timing of a change, say it initially says in the early morning and it suddenly becomes it's going to be in the evening, those changes will also be updated when required at any point in the day or night. In terms of what these forecasts look like, on the left-hand side you can see the coastal waters forecast, and on the right-hand side the coastal or the wind warning. And these are two separate things, and what you'll see on the left-hand side is the information around the wind, the seas, the swell, the weather conditions. It'll also have a line about is there a warning current. So you can see here on the Eden Coastal Waters forecast from earlier this morning that there is a little line for a strong wind warning being current for the 25th and a gale wind warning for today. But the warning itself doesn't contain that information in terms of the exact wind speeds and directions that we're expecting. That information is in the forecast. The warning itself, as you can see on the right-hand side there, just lists what coastal waters areas have that warning current. Further than 60 nautical miles offshore, we start moving into the high seas area. So what you can see in the top right-hand corner there is the map of the Australian waters, and for the Sydney to Hobart, obviously the southeastern area is the one that is of interest, particularly for that area more than 60 nautical miles offshore. And similar to the coastal waters forecasts and warnings, they also go through the weather situation, the winds and waves forecast, and the weather conditions as well. But what you'll notice is a plain text forecast, and for the weather situation it will delineate particular features by latitude and longitude and plot it at different points in time. These forecasts only look at the next 24 hours, and they're generally issued twice a day, and if there is a warning current, that warning will be updated every 6 hours. And the warning, again, free text, and can be a little bit confusing to look at, but again contains the same information about what type of warning is it. In this particular case, it will also include the situation and the conditions within the area affected by that warning. Last but not least, online, you probably have all seen Meta, and you might be starting to play around on the Bureau's beta website, but what you can see in these is both the written text forecast like what I showed you earlier, but also the graphical kind. So in Meta you can overlay the significant wave heights and some of the swell directions. At the moment on our beta website you can see these individually. Now this data that feeds into these systems is generally updated twice a day, and it includes what effectively comes out into the forecasts and what you see on the BOM app as well. In terms of where else to find information, out on the water there's a few ways to get the Bureau's forecasts and warnings. So there is satellite communication, there's HF and VHF radio, as well as the BOM's Marine Light page, which just has text-based forecasts as well as some easy and to download charts. For the most part, all of these include the coastal waters and the high seas forecasts and warnings. Now with the HF radio, there are a number of channels that are used to broadcast that information. The warnings are broadcast every hour, and the forecasts are broadcast every 4 hours. So most importantly, race conditions. At the moment, it does look as though we're going to have some northeasterly winds to start off with for the race, and they're going to be increasing on Thursday afternoon and evening, potentially getting up to gale force category offshore along the south coast of New South Wales. And then we're going to see a fairly brisk and sudden west to southwesterly change move across Bass Strait on early Friday morning. That change is going to move along the New South Wales coast as a southerly during Friday. As that system comes through, we could be seeing the chance of showers and maybe even the chance of some lightning or some thunderstorms. But at this stage, it's likely that we'll continue to see those strong wind warnings for at least the first few days of the race, and potentially even gale force wind warnings. What we're seeing on the charts at the moment is that cold front and trough that's going to be moving through, and that's what's going to be bringing us that west-southwesterly change across Bass Strait in the early hours of Friday morning. And you can see in the bottom row of those images that that change does start to move further north along the New South Wales coast during Friday, but starts to weaken off. We can also see that there is a trough come Friday evening that's starting to approach the west coast of Tasmania, and another cold front further west. And what we'll see through the remainder of the race will be fairly persistent westerly flow and the odd trough that will come through and give us northwest to southwesterly winds. So to start off with on Boxing Day morning. It'll be pretty sunny, fairly nice conditions, some light northerly winds, but by race start, potentially in the harbour, getting up to about 12 to 15 knots. And once you get outside the heads, probably getting up towards 20 knots. And once you get further down the New South Wales coast on Thursday, we'll see those wind speeds getting up to 15 to 30 knots. And there is a chance we could be seeing those winds pick up to about 35 knots, and that's more so offshore for areas south of about Narooma. And with that, we'll obviously see those seas starting to develop with those winds and starting to increase. On Thursday evening, we will also start to see a little bit of high cloud come through and develop ahead of that change that's expected during the early hours of Friday morning. At this stage, I've just got a consensus forecast up on screen at the moment that's sort of showing that change moving along the East Gippsland coast around 2 o'clock in the morning. And with that, that's going to bring that fairly brisk change. And, at this stage, 20 to 30 knots is likely, but there is also the potential that on the leading edge of that change, that it's going to be much stronger and potentially getting up to 35 or even 40 knots right on the leading edge, and then start to decrease in that speed once that change has moved through. Likewise, as it moves along the New South Wales coast, it'll turn a little bit more southerly, and we could be seeing that chance of a shower and possibly the chance of some lightning or a thunderstorm as well. So to just give a little indication as to how consistent the models are, a couple of days out, this is very remarkable consistency. There is some variability in the timing, in the exact timing and the wind strengths that we're expecting. But at this stage, really good consistency for that change coming through during the early hours of Friday morning. And you can see here by 5 o'clock on Friday morning, starting to move into the New South Wales coast, but there is still that variability in terms of how strong the winds are going to be through Bass Strait, and also in the lee of Tasmania, as we tend to expect. The winds can be a little bit more finicky, and that's going to be the case for later Friday as well. So what we'll see through Friday is that change starting to push through. So across Bass Strait and Tasmania, generally speaking, it's going to be west-southwesterly. We will potentially still see some northwesterly just along the east coast of Tasmania, and along the New South Wales coast, it will be a south to southwesterly change initially, and then it'll start to turn a little bit more southeasterly through the day. But as that change makes its way further east, we will start to see those winds ease off a little bit. And what you can see off the east coast of Tasmania is the winds become quite variable. At this stage, it's a tricky forecast for what kind of wind speeds and direction we'll be seeing. It could be light and variable, or in some cases it might turn more south or even easterly around 10 knots. So one thing to watch out for will be that bit of the Tasmanian coast between St Helens down to about Maria Island. So bear that in mind for Friday and for the following days with that fairly persistent westerly flow. So by Friday evening, that second trough is starting to approach, and you can see that the winds along the Tasmanian coast tend a little bit more northwesterly, but across Bass Strait still remaining west or even west-southwesterly, and probably around 15 to 25 knots, but can't rule out getting up to about 30 knots at times across parts of Bass Strait and also south of about Tasman Island. Now, during Saturday, you can see that we continue to see that westerly flow and those variable winds along the east coast of Tasmania. For those that are perhaps starting to move and come in towards Hobart, at this stage it's more likely that we'll continue to see west to northwesterly winds through the Derwent Estuary, but depending on the timing of that trough coming through, you may encounter some southwesterly winds coming in through Storm Bay, potentially up to around 15 to 20 knots. So bear that in mind on Saturday as we see that change move through. And once that has passed, then we again see those westerly winds persist through Bass Strait, and along the Tasmanian coast it becomes a little bit more variable, particularly along the north and southeast coast there. So one thing to watch out for will be those winds along the east coast of Tasmania and just how variable they'll be. And what I've got up on screen and for the next couple of slides is just a little model comparison between some of the major global models around the positioning of the mean sea level pressure analysis chart, as well as some of the winds over the next few days. And what we see is that fairly persistent westerly through Saturday. And then by Sunday, we start to see that ridge start to move in towards the Tasman Sea, but still maintaining generally some kind of westerly flow across parts of Tasmania. And potentially this little trough that will just brush the southeast Tasmanian coast, which will bring potentially some more southerly winds along the Tasmanian coast on Sunday, and into Monday we'll start to see those winds turn more northerly ahead of the next system that looks as though it will be a little bit stronger in terms of the winds that we'll be seeing, and those northerly winds picking up again on Monday and then starting to turn more southerly during Tuesday on New Year's Eve. So at this stage, still the risk of seeing some strong winds as we move towards New Year's, but realistically the stronger wind period is going to be through the first half of the week. So depending on what day you manage to make it into Hobart, it is going to be a fairly consistent forecast with that fairly persistent westerly flow. So at this stage, some fresh winds from the west or northwest through Hobart, maximum temperatures in the high teens or low 20s, and the chance of a shower around. If we do see those showers, they're going to be fairly isolated and passing in nature. Out on the water, in terms of the currents, we have a couple of little eddies off the New South Wales coast and off Tasmania as well. Some of those you may be able to sort of pick up some southward current, which will be amazing. At the moment, there's sort of about 1 to 1.2 knots off parts of the New South Wales coast. But one thing to note for those that might be taking a little bit longer to get down to Hobart is once we see that change move along the New South Wales coast, the currents are like inshore along the New South Wales coast will be quite varied and wind-driven, so a little bit more difficult to forecast if you're staying really close inshore along the New South Wales coast following that change on Friday. Likewise with the currents and the eddies off Tasmania at the moment, we're expecting those to start to shift south in the next day or so. And with that, in terms of the sea surface temperatures, it's pretty warm still. So what we're seeing is temperature anomalies of 2 to 3 degrees. Particularly off the New South Wales coast, and aligned with some of those eddies, we can see that off sort of Gabo Island, Eden kind of area where we're seeing that second eddy, that the sea surface temperatures, once you get below about 21 degrees, you're probably outside of that southerly current. So one thing to watch out for will be that in terms of that little pocket of the world. Tides, obviously we're sitting on just after low tide for the race start and have the usual cycle of the low and high tides throughout the race. So to summarise, we've got northeasterly winds to start the race off with, and expecting those to become quite strong during Thursday, potentially touching upon gale force along the New South Wales coast on Thursday afternoon and evening. And then we'll see that really quite brisk and abrupt west to southwesterly change early Friday morning, moving across Bass Strait, and that'll start to make its way up the New South Wales coast as a southerly during Friday itself. As we see that change move through, we could be seeing the chance of some showers, maybe even the chance of some lightning or a thunderstorm. But once we see that move through, we should start remaining sort of northwest to southwesterly winds for most of the rest of the race. Strong wind warnings are really likely for at least the first several days, and there is the risk of gale wind warnings. So with that, I'll say thank you and good luck. I look forward to seeing you on Boxing Day and following your adventures down south.
Thanks, Gabriel. So next to the dais is Lisa Knott from the RMS Maritime. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, there we go. So I'm just going to cover off the waterway restrictions and exclusion zone on Sydney Harbour for the start of the race. There's a few changes to the exclusion zone this year. We are deploying less exclusion zone buoys. That's because they're slightly larger, a bit more visible this year, so they're a bit further spaced out. The southern boundary on the exclusion zone has also been reduced this year, and that's just to align with appropriate spacing with the start lines inside the exclusion zone. So we've got the 4 start lines, the 2 rounding marks and the 3 sea buoys out the heads. From 11 o'clock, we'll have about 35 marine rescue and maritime vessels out patrolling the area. And then from 11:30, there'll be a 6-knot no-wash zone in force. So we'll be slowing down people. We'll also have a couple of assets here in the Rushcutters Bay Channel just to make sure that you guys have a clear channel out to get into the exclusion zone. The So the 6 knot no wash is in the blue shade on the map, and the red hatched area is a no passive craft restriction. So that'll be enforced from 11:30. At 12 o'clock, the exclusion zone is activated. So we would request that you are inside the exclusion zone by 12 o'clock. Please ensure that your Rolex flag is clearly displayed so that we can recognise that you're a competitor in the race. We also request that you do not exit through the exclusion zone boundary into the spectator fleet. The exclusion zone is there to obviously give you guys a clear start for the race, but it's also there for the safety of all the spectators that are coming out to watch from the sidelines. If you do need to exit and you need to come back into the club, we request that you do so from the southern boundary, as there are less spectators expected in that southern boundary area. That is all from me. Thanks. Have a good race.
Thank you, Lisa. Then we have a virtual presentation now from Danielle Gillies, AMSA. If we can just get that up on the screen. Great. Thanks, Dan.
Hopefully you can hear me okay. Thanks for your time. I'll run through just some considerations with regards to search and rescue, medical advice, medical evacuations, and any other operations that Joint Rescue Coordination Centre Australia might need to conduct. I understand probably you've seen much of this before, and you should all be fairly familiar with safety appliances and gear on board and procedures. It'd just be a moment now to give some thought to what you might need to do and what your considerations might be if you have an emergency, noting that you'll be pretty occupied and focused on the day of the race. So as you know, the Joint Rescue Coordination Centre Australia operates here at AMSA's head office in Canberra on a 24/7 basis. And we'll respond to all emergency beacon detections and broadcasts. Any alerts, particularly those from beacons that are received by us, will be treated as a genuine distress situation unless we receive any information to indicate otherwise. So if you are required to activate a beacon, you'll be familiar with the two types: the emergency position indicating radio beacon, EPIRBs. Some of those are automatically activated when removed from their cradles, others will be manually activated. In either case, you will hear an audible tone and you will see a flashing strobe on the EPIRB once it's activated. EPIRBs all have lanyards attached to them and are designed to propagate best when they're floating in the water. They are all designed to float upright. So if you are required to deploy one, best place for it is in the water attached to the raft or to yourself, or if you're in a vessel that is not sinking or taking on significant amounts of water attached to the vessel. If in rough weather, the beacon can be kept inside a raft, but propagates best when vertical. So if you're in a raft and you need to keep the beacon inside due to rough conditions, if you try to keep it vertical, that will give you the best chance of us getting an accurate position. Personal locator beacons, the smaller type that you will likely all be carrying either in your PFD pouches or bum bags or whatever you might have on you. They work the same way as EPIRBs. However, they're not designed to float upright, and the battery life on them is less than an EPIRB. If you're required to activate a PLB, you could attach it to the upper part of your body is the best place for it, above the water. Make sure it is attached to you via a lanyard. If you're in a group and you are all carrying PLBs, it's not necessary to activate all of those PLBs. You can activate them. It won't disrupt the satellite system. It may just make it harder for responding aircraft to locate you via oral homing. I'd suggest if you do have a need to activate beacons in a genuine distress situation, 2 is probably sufficient, probably the EPIRB and a PLB. More than one tells us pretty quickly that it's not an accidental activation. And obviously, if you're in a group and become separated, activate and make sure your PLB is active. What will happen if you do activate an EPIRB or a PLB? Well, you'll hear an audible tone and you'll see a strobe or LED flashing on top of the beacon. Once that distress signal is received and relayed to JRCC Australia via satellite, we will commence contacting race control and they all should have been uploaded to us. So we will have a note there that each of your beacons is associated with the Sydney to Hobart Yacht Race. We'll also contact owners' emergency contacts. If we cannot confirm your safety and cannot confirm that it is an inadvertent alert, we will begin deploying assets to you. Assets that are tasked will be the most suitable for the job based on weather conditions, time of day and resources available. We will generally look to task aircraft, which I'll talk through shortly, but we may also task surface assets to respond if they're closest and most suitable. We have a very cooperative arrangement with the police forces around the country as well as the Australian Defence Force. AMSA will often coordinate a rescue response following activation of an EPIRB or PLB, but where it's most appropriate for police to coordinate, we would transfer coordination to them. In either case, we provide each other support in terms of providing aviation assets and surface assets to each other. If there are no suitable assets in the area or weather conditions preclude, you may be on your own vessel the closest to an emergency distress. And if required, we may have to issue a distress broadcast to vessels and request that racing vessels divert to provide assistance to others in need. In terms of aviation assets that you are likely to see deployed in response to beacons or emergency broadcasts or other distress situations. The one in the top left there is one of AMSA's dedicated rescue aircraft. There is a rescue jet located in Essendon in Melbourne, which would likely be the first asset deployed in response to a beacon. That's on 30 minutes notice to move. So what that means is on receipt of a distress beacon, they would be very quickly receiving a request for tasking and would be airborne within 30 minutes of notification. That aircraft can drop emergency supplies, communications equipment, medical gear, dewatering pumps, drogues, a number of other items. If required, some of that equipment needs to be loaded on the aircraft prior to departure. It's not all on there all the time. So with that in mind, if you have a genuine emergency and you do require assistance, a follow-up phone call via satellite phone or some information via VHF marine radio will help us to make sure we get the right equipment and right assets to you to provide the assistance that you need. The aircraft and all aircraft or almost all aircraft that would be tasked in response to a maritime emergency are fitted with marine VHF radios. The Challenger jet would likely be used as a communications relay for you if we were required to conduct helicopter operations or if we needed to give you instructions around dropping equipment to you or anything else. So if you do have an active beacon and a genuine distress emergency, if you can make sure you have marine VHF radio turned up on channel 16 as loud as you can get it, things will get noisy once an aircraft gets overhead. In terms of helicopter operations, as I said, if you could make sure that VHF Marine channel 16 is turned all the way up, you will get instructions from either our Challenger jet aircraft or from a helicopter with regards to what they need to do. That may be to alter your heading into the weather, but the aircraft on scene will be best to provide advice to you. Helicopter operations, A139s and Bell 412s are the primary aircraft that you're likely to see in this part of Australia. They all create a significant amount of rotor wash, so it will be needed if you can make sure you secure sails and use. It may also be impossible for them to conduct winch operations from your vessel due to hazards. And that in mind, they may ask you to launch a life raft if you have a need to evacuate someone and they can't launch to you. If you are in a life raft and require rescue, please keep in mind that almost all helicopters that we would task you are fitted with winches, but a helicopter hovering over you may not necessarily be setting up for a winch. If you're in a raft, please do not leave the raft for any reason. If we do need to winch you from a raft, helicopter crew will be lowered to you and they will come to the raft. Do not get out of the raft and swim to them. There is no guarantee that they will be able to catch you. So please remain in a raft until someone gets to you if you find yourself in that situation. Outside of that, medical assistance, if you require medical advice, you can contact the race committee for initial advice and assessment. We do have a telemedical advice service here at AMSA, which we can utilise if there are urgent needs for specialist medical advice. If we get a request for a medical evacuation, we will engage our telemedical advice service to provide subject matter expertise to us and let us know the urgency with which the medevac needs to be conducted and any special considerations in terms of whether it's a stretcher or stroke winch and what medical supplies we might need to bring with us. If you do have a serious medical issue, you can contact JRCC Australia directly to access that telemedical advice, or you can contact 000 directly. In either case, AMSA and state territory police forces and state police will coordinate with each other to make sure that we get the right care to you in the right place at the right time. Outside of that, and I will open up for any questions if you do have questions with regards to maritime emergencies. For return voyages, if you could do us a favour and please ensure that EPIRB and boat contact details have been updated with delivery crew details. We do often hear of misadventure on the return voyages. It can sometimes be difficult for us to figure out how many people are on board and what the nature of emergency is and what sort of assistance might be required for those return voyages, because we don't have as much information about the vessels and crew. So if you could do that for us, that would help us immensely to make sure we give the right help to the people in need at the time. That is it from me. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Dan. Are there any questions from the room? No? Okay, good. Thanks, Dan. Okay, I'd like to ask Lee Goddard, the Race Committee Chairman, to please present from here. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, Sam. I know many of you, but again, Lee Goddard, I'm Chair of your committee and also the on-water race director for this year's Sydney Hobart Yacht Race. The committee includes people who are well known to most of you: David Kellett, Niall Cornish, Mark Pavillard, and from the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania, Steve Mannering. Of course, we work with, they work with us, is Race Control, based at the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania, a very experienced Tasmanian-based team. Many have done the race 10, 15, 20 times, either on the water or actually on management. And of course, we also work very closely with Tara and the Sailing Office. So welcome to the compulsory briefing, as is the weather brief at 8 a.m. on a Boxing Day. And my first statement, as always, is that the great race is on. We'll start on time on Boxing Day. I acknowledge Sam, our Commodore here at the CYCA, but also the Commodore of the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania, Rowdy. I think it's quite unique that we'll have both Commodores at sea racing this year, which I think is a great thing for the race. Obviously, I acknowledge all those who work at the CYC and the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania, in particular the finishing line team led by Tracy Matthews, who we'll hear from shortly, AMSA, BOM, the RMS, the Water Police, Marine Rescue, New South Wales Police and Tasmanian Police, both on water, marine units, but also land. They do a lot to actually support this race, the media, and most importantly, you, the competition crews. Our role as your committee is to maximise participation, get everyone to the line, ensure that the race is safe, it is fair, especially in the application of the rules and regulatory requirements, and it's as fast as it can be. And as Gabby's just indicated, it is going to be, for many boats, a very fast race, and we'll be watching it very carefully, especially that transition from the northerly flow to that westerly flow. The race committee and the race management team, we're all volunteers, we're experienced, engaged, and we are independent. We've got numerous ocean races and Sydney of Hobart's between us, and also significant search and rescue experience working closely with AMSA. Broad range of backgrounds, and most importantly, we are risk aware, not risk adverse, as you should be as well. It's a dangerous race, and you need to be aware of the risks. Our starting point is that while we are fair, we are black and white in terms of expectations regarding race discipline to make sure that the race is managed correctly. Those who participate, you do so with the very clear directions as per the notice of race, the SIs, sailing instructions, and the sailing rules. We have the full range of contingency plans for all the types of emergencies that we have experienced, and many of you have experienced yourselves. We test for these, and we also assume the worst conditions, not least for the weather. And that transition is going to be pretty ugly, as you know. And as Gabby said, mind you, it's actually potentially 40% higher than the forecast, including the sea state. Communication challenges, and of course, there will be serious isolated incidents. In everybody, there will be an injury, there will be potentially a demasting, etc. as well, and you need to be ready for that, as we will be. We learn from precedents and we adapt to changing regulation, and I want to just thank all the owners and all the participants, in particular you who are here today, for your cooperation and regulatory compliance. I think this year has been the best in terms of actually the right, teamwork to make sure that all the yachts can get to the start line. Also remind you that we also have a technical committee to oversee IRC compliance, and we do have a world-class international jury. It will be an exciting race, but one thing that does keep me up at night is actually thinking about the start. 1300 on Boxing Day, with a large fleet across 4 clearly promulgated lines, as managed by the PRO, Dennis, and his very experienced team. Mind you, there'll be no general recall. Reporting at the start, of course, in accordance with the sailing instruction 11.1, allow plenty of fleet room as you approach the committee vessel and consideration when manoeuvring. Mind you, once you go past that line, you still have 628 nautical miles to go. So be competitive, but just be risk aware. At the start, the media will be close to the racing action, as you would expect, and this will be on a non-interference basis, and there may be movements between some boats. Just want to highlight the sailing instructions, which were published well over a week ago, some of the major changes, and highlight some amendments to both the sailing instructions and to the notice of race, noting that this year is different from last year, primarily with the communications. So I ask you just to listen in carefully, and if you have any questions, please ask us. First of all, the committee. We actually have a sub-technical committee who will be conducting IRC spot checks both prior to and following the race finish. Boats should be prepared for inspection from the time of finishing up until 12 hours after the individual's boat finish time. If you are found to be non-compliant, you may be subject to a protest by the technical committee through myself. Position reports. To be conducted via satellite phone, SMS to Hobart Race Control to the designated mobile number twice daily at 0635 and at 1835 hours. Boats will have a 60-minute window to submit their position at these 2 times. For situational awareness, the position data will then be emailed to all boat email addresses and may be published online at the Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race website. Boats that do not comply within the hour will be contacted after the 60-minute window to be notified that Hobart Race Control has not received their position. Green Cape report. Boats will be required to make a satellite voice call to Hobart Race Control when in the vicinity of Green Cape to make sure the declaration is in accordance with the sailing instructions. The call must come from a satellite phone on board that meets the Australian Sailing Special Regulations, i.e. a satellite phone incorporating voice and SMS capability, retained in a securely fastened mountain, connected to the vessel's electrical supply, equipped with a permanently located external aerial, and in continuous coverage for the race area. And the boat must confirm that this satellite phone is operational and fit for purpose. And in accordance with SI 32, what to be reported is very clear at that time as well. Retirements and incidents. A boat that retires or requires assistance should and shall call Hobart Race Control on the dedicated mobile number. This number is monitored 24/7, as is mine. Following on from this initial phone call, Hobart Race Control may communicate with the competitor via satellite phone, SMS. Should there be an incident and the race committee needs to contact multiple yachts, an SMS will be sent to boats in the vicinity that may be able to assist, and satellite phone calls will be made as required. You need to keep a good watch, by all means, including satellite phone, including SMS. All sat phone users that do not use the +88 number, i.e. use a cell phone number and obviously via Starlink, must ensure that the test was carried out on the boat using the satellite connection and not the cellular network, i.e. from home. Otherwise, that defeats the purpose, and I would be very disappointed if I discovered that anyone had done that. A boat may not protest another boat for an alleged breach of Notice of Race 14, which has caused media rights and restrictions, If there is any issue, it will be dealt with by the race committee through myself. And the final thing just to highlight is the notice to competition to competitors number 1, and that again refers to Starlink, refers to satellite phones, and it refers again to that Green Cape. And I am repeating that because it is different from last year. I want to make sure that everyone understands that. And I emphasise the discipline of the SCED. We're still using that word. It's very different from the HF SCED, but we're still using it to make sure that we actually understand how important that is. And yeah, position reports, as I said, twice daily. You'll receive an email with the fleet positions, and you remember your position has to be accurately charted at 0630 and at 1830. If you have a problem reporting, you must make every effort by VHF or satellite phone or through another vessel or call race control or myself on my mobile, and many of you do. Race committee will be available throughout the duration of the race on the mobile numbers provided on the cover sheets, including the mobile numbers for the SCEDs. And I remind you, irrespective, you must at all times keep a proper listening watch on VHF channel 16, and you have a requirement to report wind strengths and wave heights when wind strengths exceed 40 knots. And I've got no doubt, for most of you, you will be reporting that at some stage during this race. Just initially, report where you are. Then what will actually happen, you'll see race control will then make it clear that those yachts in the vicinity, we actually get it about terms of the weather. So it's not like every time you get a squall of 40 knots coming through. Yeah, so use good judgment, but our expectation, if it hasn't been reported to report it. And I want to remind you, this year there is no radio relay vessel because there's no requirement. And after the Sterling service for many years, both JBW and Young Endeavour will not be at sea. Some more general reminders about your participation and really from a safety perspective. I mind you, you must have the correct but minimum requirements for safety numbers on at all times, and any crew change must be advised and acknowledged by the sailing office from now on. Please note the advice on potential hazards to navigation all the way down that 620 nautical mile race track, whichever track you choose to take. If you do decide to discontinue racing and disembark crew and then restart, you still need to maintain the minimum crew and safety qualifications as per the notice of race. For example, radio qualifications, medical qualifications, etc., or experience levels. A declaration must be made in the cases outlined in the sailing instructions and within the time limit for lodging a protest, and please ensure you have a receipt. Marine Rescue will be up and down the coast and will continue to monitor VHF 16 throughout in case of an incident, notwithstanding that some of you, of course, will go offshore much further than perhaps they will actually be able to contact you on. If you do retire, please to continue to participate in the SCEDs and advise when you are in port. And a reminder to all crews, and particularly our double-handed crews, regarding personal safety equipment. With less people on board, there is less redundancy for equipment, so please ensure that you have considered this. Mind you, you'll all have a tracker, which will be turned on, of course, on the day of the race, and then will be returned. The tracker is to track you. The SCED confirms that you are okay. Please do not conflate the two. They are different. Please ensure you're knowledgeable in all functionalities of your personal equipment and test service your equipment from now on, as you should have regularly. Different PLBs, as you know, may communicate activation differently, whether they are successful or not. And all personal equipment should be tested and serviced, as we know, at regular intervals. We expect that obviously through the regulatory process, but up leading to the race and then obviously being checked throughout the race as well. And please check your personal flotation devices, your PFDs. Inadvertent triggering of EPIRBs and PLBs. Please ensure you maintain and take good care of all personal equipment and report any accidental activation immediately. As you heard from AMSA, as soon as there's a PLB or an EPIRB activated, that aircraft immediately goes on notice to launch. At the 30-minute mark, it's no cry wolf, we will actually launch the aircraft, and there could be action against the yacht if we actually have been trying to contact you to confirm either way. Also remind you as well, on the 26th and 27th, many of those emergency people and aircraft are going to be very focused on incidents in Victoria and New South Wales with the pending bushfire situation as well. So we do not want to detract or distract from what they will be focused on. Maintain a good lookout by all means possible, as I mentioned before. Man overboard, as you know, it's all about your individual responses, our collective responses and control, but it's actually about good VHF and communication early, broadcasting your life-saving devices and dealing with your circumstances, and of course we will be ready to assist. Sea life, not so much whales, but of course there are a lot of dolphins, sunfish, others out there. We ask you to report any incidents with sea life at the next available opportunity. And as Griff will tell you, there's extensive technology now available to assist boats and preventing sea life incidents. Medical professionals on call. Please ensure you fully consider your plans for dealing with and reporting medical emergencies and be aware of any pre-existing medical issues for crew members. We have the advice that you've provided us, but you need to be very aware of the conditions of your crew members at all times. It is going to be a challenging, stressful race for most yachts. In fact, all yachts at some point. There's no doubt about that. As I said, challenging weather conditions. We expect emergency conditions ashore with the bushfires. That northerly-westerly transition, it is going to be one hell of a crack, when it comes, and you've all experienced that at times, so be ready for it. Note the SI on drones and comply. SI requires any protest to be advised by Tasman Island for incidents prior to Tasman Island. And competitors should be familiar, of course, with anchorages, and you should be carrying an anchor. And so don't get me in trouble with the dockmaster, Mick in particular, if you turn up and don't have one, because some of you will actually have to do a Mediterranean moor and lay an anchor in Constitution Dock. Actually, Trace will talk more about that. Consider early your delivery home plan and inform your next of kin so that we're not doing that for you about what you're actually doing. Look out for general notices. Commodore Sam will mention about some paperwork that still needs to be done. Final thing is there's a lot of volunteers. You're amazing as competitors, but there's a lot of volunteers, probably 200 plus volunteers to support you. So thank a volunteer at some point during this race. And again, good luck. The race is on. Cheers.
Acknowledgements of SMSs and the skets, does that happen, or does it? Just how do we know that skit goes?
You'll know that it's been acknowledged because also within 1 hour you'll see the general report that comes out, etc. as well. So it will. You can assume if we haven't contacted you within 60 minutes, it's actually been received. So you don't need to be hanging out there waiting for us to come back each time. So just send it through. If we haven't got it, then we'll actually contact you, and then the general email will come out. So it's a really good point. I don't want you just hanging on. No, it's unlikely. So it's very different from the HF because it's actually not a traditional SCED anymore. We're still calling it a SCED. It's really a report goes through SMS. We'll compile it, and then within 60 minutes we'll come back out to you. So we may even eventually get rid of the word SCED. Anyway, we'll have a think about that.
It's another.
Can you clarify the response to the Green Cape report? So,
in terms of,
well, the sailing instructions say that there will be an acknowledgement, and we must see if there's been an acknowledgement. How will that happen?
Yeah, first of all, I've got David Keller here as well. It'll be voice. So actually, the expectation is by voice. You'll go through, and then that will be acknowledged. That we are satisfied within SI, I think it's 32. You've come through and said the 5 or 6 statements that we need you to make, and then it'll be acknowledged, and then you're clear to go for group case holders.
Is that a recorded message, or are we actually talking in person?
No, you're talking to a person.
Sorry, that's a good point. So actually you're talking physically to a watchkeeper for race control. That's what you're asking. Yes. So absolutely. And that will be acknowledged by race control.
Given there's about 100 boats that will be calling in at the same time, is there an expectation that we'll get busy tones and having to continue to try?
That is a possibility. I mean, we've got 100 boats. Obviously, we don't expect 100 at one time, but I know you mean there could be concentrations at 15, 20 yachts. There'll also be alternate numbers as well on call as well. So to work it through, including as we go through. But I might just get David to talk about it. We've actually gone through that scenario, that concentration.
The mobile phone runs through a rotary system that we have linked to about 6 different phones. So if one's busy, it'll go to the next one.
Yeah.
We've tested that, it's all working fine. So we're confident that it'll work.
And just in terms of testing with the SMS system, and we're not going back, it actually is far more efficient, more effective, we think much safer. Of course, in the Tapestry race, we have about 55 boats. In the Gold Coast race, we have almost 60 boats. So we've actually gone through large numbers of boats going through and doing the reporting. And this system has been tested numerous times. So,
Just a question about the sat phones being electronically connected. would we be expected to have these connected by a charging cable in a thunderstorm or school or risk of lightning?
Obviously that would be a judgment call then as well. We're not trying to create any dangerous situation, absolutely, but
The purpose of the regulation was that we didn't want a sat phone with one of those flip antennas with you standing up on one leg with your tongue on one side, trying to get a sat phone call up on deck. We wanted you to be able to make a call. Now, if you have to take the phone out of the charging system and use it and it's linked to a Bluetooth or something like that to your antenna, that's fine. And that's what the amendment, well, the notice to competitors number 1 that came out this week was described. Thank you.
any other questions? I think it's, by the way, great questions. It is really important as we actually, because it's actually not new ground now. We've been doing it for quite a few races, but for some of you it will be the first time because you weren't maybe in some of those previous races. But we are absolutely confident that this is the most effective, the most efficient, and the safest way now of controlling the Sydney Hobart race.
Is there any consideration of using WhatsApp groups to allow communication?
I think in future years we may consider a range of ways we may. If you've got an idea post this race about being more effective and more efficient, clearly we outside of the race, of course, are using WhatsApp and signal groups now because it is the most efficient way to actually queue a group of people to issues. But that's the post this race where all ears if people got ideas about potentially how we use technology to its most effective way.
So when you're trying to communicate with the fleet in case someone's thinking whatever is in one post in the area, are you going to select the boats that you're going to send messages to actually request it, or are you going to call them, or what's the?
Well, it depends. It could be an SMS or it could be a call because of the urgency, or it depends on the actual situation at the time. And we've done a lot of testing on that as well, throughout actually last year's race and also through the races this year.
Yes, it doesn't know multiple rounds.
Yeah. Just last point. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Is there any HF coverage at all in terms of Hobart race control if the satellite system fails?
So there's probably a legacy, but it's not our intent to use HF, so you shouldn't rely on that at all. So sure, if you've got it, and then maybe you even heard cancer, and they don't want you to use HF, and the police folks don't want you to use HF as well. So that's probably the easiest way to say. Sure, there might be some legacy systems out there, but it's certainly well and truly tertiary. Shane?
Yeah, in the Coventry race, we had 6 inadvertent AIS alarms.
Yeah.
It seems to me we've had a lot of these, and we're getting what I call AIS fatigue.
Yeah.
People are ignoring them. They're just hoping it'll go out. Some of the good navigators will check in on you. I guess there's a little plea here. If skippers and navigators could check the AISs to see that the safety catch, which is a little plastic clear thing, is in the AIS, because most of these problems are people aren't arming them right.
Yeah. It's a really good point. We do focus on the EPIRBs and PLBs, but we also have these inadvertent AIS alerts as well. And it could be whatever it may be. People have got to make sure they are very situationally aware, especially navigators at those consoles.
Yeah, just in terms of some of the other blue water races, we've used SMS from mobile phones if we're in reception. Would you prefer us to use sat phones for this race, or is that acceptable as well?
I think sat phones is always a preference, but I think if you're in mobile range and it's effective for you, then as long as it's achieving the same effects. So.
Except for the Green Cape check.
Exactly, good point. Except for Green Cape. That's why we're so clear on Green Cape. It has to be a satellite, phone, SMS, and voice to make sure we're absolutely. Actually, we are confident. More importantly, you're confident before you go to the Bash Bay area. So, yeah, but good question. Thank you. Any other questions with regard in particular to communications? All right, good luck, thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Thank you. Now I'll ask Tracy Matthews, finishing coordinator, Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania, to give us the good news about when we arrive.
And it is all good news because the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania are pleased once again to be the finishing partner for the 79th edition of the Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race. We're looking forward to seeing you all in the Derwent River again soon. Okay. A couple of things for noting as you get to the Hobart end of the race. Details of the finishing line and other finishing notes are in the sailing instructions at clause 17. The finishing line is off the Hobart finish box in Castray Esplanade Battery Point. For those who've not been to Hobart before, this is what it looks like. Salubrious location. Positioned between the white Empress Towers on the left and the cream CSIRO building on the right. We locally refer to the box as the Castray finish box, so if you happen to hear that over the radio from our volunteers, don't panic, you are in the right place. In the SIs, it's referred to as the Hobart finish box. The outer end of the finishing line will be marked with a yellow buoy and will have a flashing light at night. There's also an inner distance mark that must be left to port. If you're finishing at night, please illuminate your sail number on the port side so the finish box can confirm your identity. Once you're through the line, contact the Hobart finish box as per the sailing instructions 34.4. Please don't contact Hobart Race Control. Drop sails and stand by for the escort vessel. This will be one of the RYCT or DSS patrol boats. If there are several yachts finishing together, please be patient. A patrol boat will get to you as soon as possible. Observe all directions from the skipper of the patrol boat and please do not enter Kings Pier Marina until instructed to do so. During the operating hours of the Taste of Summer Festival, you will enter the dock via a short detour past Princess Wharf, where you will receive a very enthusiastic welcome to Hobart from those enjoying the festival, and the crowds just love seeing you all arriving. We also share our finish line and berthing facilities with the fleets from the Melbourne to Hobart and Launceston to Hobart races, so there's plenty going on across the waterfront. The Rolex Sydney to Hobart fleet will be berthed within the Kings Pier Marina and in Constitution Dock, taking account of your yacht length and draft and the suitable berths available. You have been allocated a berth and will be directed to the berth by the patrol boat. The berthing plan is very much a live document until you all get to Hobart, so you must use your assigned berth. Most yachts berthed in Kings Pier Marina will be berthed alongside the floating pontoons. Some yachts, 18 to 20 metres, will be berthed alongside the Elizabeth Street Pier, and these may be doubled up. Any yacht to be berthed alongside a wharf will be issued with fender boards. However, you will require your own fenders. All yachts are required to have at least 2 fenders available and accessible when berthing. Please do not send your fenders down with your baggage. They must be accessible on your arrival for berthing. For those in contention for the Line Honours presentation berth, please make sure you either have appropriate fenders on board or your support crew are on the dock with fenders when you arrive. Yachts with a draft of 2.4 metres or less should expect to be berthed in Constitution Dock. Those yachts in Con Dock with lengths of between 9 and 11 metres could be berthed Mediterranean style onto a floating pontoon along the Con Dock seawall and may be required to deploy an anchor. Your anchor should be sized for your yacht and accessed prior to entering the dock, and the patrol boat will give you instructions about that. All other yachts berthed in Con Dock will be alongside and may be doubled up. Fender boards will be provided for alongside berthing. Entering Constitution Dock requires the bridge to be opened by Tasports. To facilitate this may require yachts to be staged within Kings Pier Marina for a short time before the bridge can be opened. Your cooperation is required. Our volunteers will endeavour to berth you as soon as possible. Please follow the instructions from the patrol boat. If you know you have engine problems as you're coming up the river, a call to race control prior to finishing would be appreciated so we can make the appropriate arrangements. Please respect the volunteer crew berthing your vessel and accept the berth that's been allocated. As per usual, the Race Liaison Centre will be in the Rolex Village, and that's the red cross on the map there, and our volunteers will be there to help you with any queries, questions and directions. Whether you're in Con Dock or Kings Pier, once you're safely berthed, you'll be welcomed by our liaison volunteers. In exchange for your tracker, the volunteers will deliver some well-earned refreshments. You will also receive an envelope with extra New Year's Eve wristbands for friends and family. Crew members will use their race lanyards for entry to the marina on New Year's Eve. You will also receive a quarantine bag. It's a requirement of Biosecurity Tasmania that every yacht disposes quarantine items appropriately. Use the quarantine bag provided to dispose of all fish and fish products, meat and meat products, fruit and vegetables, eggs and seeds. We have been advised that biosecurity inspections will be carried out on the marina during this period, so please bag and bin as soon as practical on your arrival. If you have any doubt, chuck it out. Quarantine bins will be around the village, including in the waste compound. If you need more quarantine bags, please see the Liaison Centre. Baggage. No change this year to the baggage collection point. It's the same location as last year, in the Executive Building underground car park, 4 Despard Street. It's easy to find and a short walk from the village. It's in the street that runs behind Peter Johnson's Ship Chandlery and the Customs House Hotel. The entrance is the cream roller door, and there will be signage and phone numbers for assistance. Glenorchy Rotary Club will once again be supporting the race and staffing the baggage collection area. This information is also online for your access via the website. The Glenorchy Rotary Club will be open for baggage business 24 hours daily after the first yacht finishes and up to 24 hours after the last yacht arrives, except on New Year's Eve. They will be closed from 6 p.m. on New Year's Eve, reopening 8 a.m. New Year's Day. Also, please note that in the event of retirement from the race, you are responsible for the collection and return transport of your bags from Hobart. Please label each separate bag you put on the truck with your name and contact details on a key tag or with permanent marker. This will ensure that all bags are easily sorted and stored for your collection in Hobart. Please collect your baggage as soon as practicable on arrival. After the 1st of January, all remaining bags will be relocated to the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania. Some final points. All power cords used in the marina must be tagged and tested and must be run safely on any walkways. These will be checked. If you need to get a cord tested, please see the Liaison Centre. The official prize giving will again be in the Federation Concert Hall at the Hotel Grand Chancellor at 3 p.m. on the 31st of December. Everyone is welcome, and refreshments will be served immediately following the presentation on the mezzanine level at the hotel. All yachts must vacate the marina by 10 a.m. on the 3rd of January. If you require extended berthing in Kings Pier after 10 a.m. on the 3rd, please see the Race Liaison Centre, who can advise on availability of berths and provide further information from TasPorts. Any problems on any matters, see the friendly team at the Liaison Centre in the village. They are there to help if they can. I also encourage everyone to come down to Murrayville Esplanade in Sandy Bay to visit the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania. It's a short distance from the waterfront and also the location of the committee room, radio room and protest room during the race. The club will be open normal hours, and it's a great place for your friends and family to await your arrival, or for your crew to enjoy a change of scenery with our bar, outdoor deck and dining facilities. You can also access full club services such as fuel and water prior to your return delivery. On New Year's Eve, the bistro is open from 5 p.m. for dinner, followed by a great viewing of the fireworks. And on New Year's Day, there is a dock party from 1 p.m. Please call us at the club to book for these events, or if there's anything we can help you with. Finally, I wish you all a safe trip to Hobart and a very happy Christmas. Have a great race, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you on arrival. Cheers.
Thanks, Tracy. That brings us to the conclusion of the briefing, unless there are any further questions. Okay, thank you. We also just have one matter of housekeeping. If Mayfair, please, could report to the sailing office for paperwork, that'd be good. And I'll wish everyone the best of luck with the race, and have a great trip down to Hobart. Thank you.